Hello and welcome to the Election Wrap, our guide to all the election news of the day. The Conservatives' election expenses scandal returns. Craig McKinley, who beat Nigel Farage in South Thanet last time round, is charged with overspending in his 2015 campaign. She'll be there this time, and so will he. Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn slug it out tonight in the BBC Question Time Leaders special. Those two might not be going head-to-head tonight, but our guests will. But they'll get along, I'm sure. Anne McElvoy from The Economist and political reporter for The Guardian. Jessica Elgot are with us. Now, it's gone this way and that in recent elections, but who will take the marginal swing seat of Enfield North this time?
Here I am, pack of a dog, at Downing Street. That's in London, that. And look who's there, cocker. It's my first constituent. Yeah, it's Larry the cat.
Talking the talk and walking the walk. We're on the campaign trail with CBBC's Hackatea dog. Is his bark worse than his bite? Should have invited him here to join us. Now, let's bring you up to date with the latest developments from the election campaign. Police charged the Conservative candidate for South Thanet, Craig McKinley, over an alleged breach of election spending at the last general election. But Theresa May stands by him.
Well, the Conservative Party continues to believe that these allegations are unfounded. Craig McKinley is innocent until proven guilty, and he remains our candidate.
Former UKIP leader Nigel Farage, who lost to Craig McKinley in South Thanet in 2015, says he's baffled by the Prime Minister's stance.
Once again, it is bad judgment from Theresa May. You know, why on earth would you allow someone to go ahead as a general election candidate when this cloud was clearly hanging over him?
The reaction to Donald Trump's withdrawal from the Paris Climate Change Accord sparks a political row here. Opponents attack the Prime Minister for not joining other European leaders in condemning the move.
Given the chance to present a united front from our international partners, she's instead opted for silence and once again subservience to Donald Trump. It's a dereliction of both her duty to this country and our duty to our planet.
And Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon clarifies her position on whether the SNP should join a potential anti-Conservative coalition.
I don't think it's going to be a hung parliament, but if it was a hung parliament, then I've made very clear in the past I would want to be part of a progressive alternative to a Tory government. And in that situation, of course, the SNP on Scotland's behalf would wield significant influence, and we would seek to pursue progressive policies.
SNP leader Nicola Sturgeon. Well, welcome to the programme. We're going to talk first about Craig McKinley being charged by the Crown Prosecution Service over his 2015 election expenses, along with his election agent and a party official. Craig McKinley has released this statement on his Facebook page. Clearly, this is a shocking decision by the CPS, given that I've done nothing wrong, and I am confident that this will be made very clear as the matter progresses. He goes on to say, I'm very disappointed with the way this has been handled by the CPS and Kent Police, and I must question the timing of this decision, given that Kent Police confirmed on the 18th of April that their file had been sent to the CPS to review and make their decision. Why leave this until a few days before the election? Well, with us are Jessica Elgot from The Guardian and Anne McElvoy from The Economist. We must be very careful, of course. There's a potential to sort of prejudice this case. He's only just been charged. But, Jessica, how much of a concern is this going to be for the Conservatives?
I think this has come at the end of another quite bad week for the Conservatives and their campaign. The first signs of misfire came at the manifesto launch. They launched a social care policy, which other parties are nicknaming the dementia tax. And throughout this whole week, there's been a series of criticisms of the Prime Minister from not turning up to the last TV debate and sending Amber Rudd instead. And this, I think, will just be seen by people in the Conservative Party headquarters as another notch.
There are so many twists and turns, though, in this election, which no one could have foreseen, Anne. How likely is it, though, that it could just turn out to be a minor distraction?
Well, I think it's inconvenient for the Conservatives because they were rather hoping it wouldn't get to the point where it was a serious enough matter to be sent to the CPS in the first place. It, of course, doesn't preclude him being found innocent in the end, and he's put up a strong defence of himself today, Mr. McKinley. But it is just it's another problem. It's another thing you'd probably rather not have around. And as it happens, it just happens. In this case, it's happened to all the parties in the past, but in this case, it happens to be the Conservative Party. As Jessica says, it's been the week of the unscripted campaign. It really is. Every rule of campaigning has probably been broken. We've had U-turns, we've had a sort of, I think, people not being certain about how Theresa May wants to comport herself. And she has many strengths, but I wouldn't say that this week has been the best one that we've seen them in.
No, not what they would probably have chosen necessarily.
Not the finest out.
No. Well, here's surely one of the most bizarre images of the election campaign so far. I mean, we're not there yet, but it was put up by Conservative Jacob Rees-Mogg. There he is with his little boy. He'd probably be the first to admit that he's not one of the most tech-savvy people in the world. I mean, who is? He's in good company. Anyway, he's apparently just opened an Instagram account, and he's posted an image of him and his son, this one, outside a tattoo parlour in Keynsham. You might have noticed that they're standing by a Labour poster, rather at odds with their big blue rosettes, which has been put up in the window with the advice, keep saying don't vote Tory. Well, Mr Rees-Mogg, it's believed, has never been into the tattoo parlour himself, but the owners say that he's more than welcome to give them a visit. And that photo is causing quite a stir on social media. I think he's got quite a few followers on Instagram already because people want to see what he's posting. I suppose it tells us, Anne, that you really need to pick your location very carefully, and choreographing events is probably sometimes quite wise.
Well, I don't know. I think there's a good sense of humour lurking in Mr Rees-Mogg, let's be honest. You say he's not tech-savvy. I think he's a rather good investor. I think he probably knows rather a lot about the tech world. Whether he sort of chooses to use it is another matter. I think that there is a lot of irony there, and it's almost, I suppose, what might be pointing at is that sense of slightly, people with very different outlooks, very different views, some of who instinctively will think Jacob Rees-Mogg, what a snotty Tory, and others will be thinking, oh God, I hate tattoo parlours. And I think he's really playing a little bit with the cultural anthropology of this election. At least I've decided to give him the benefit of the doubt. I just think it's very amusing.
It is very amusing. And apparently what he's written next to the picture on Instagram is, we'll have to take our custom elsewhere. So he's clearly aware of what he's standing next to. But they've got to reach out, haven't they, and try to convince people who wouldn't normally vote for them.
I think that Jacob Rees-Mogg has always had a good eye for an eye-catching stunt. Lots of his Tory colleagues affectionately refer to him as the honourable member for the 19th century, and I think that is, I think that's sort of part of his personality, part of his charm, perhaps.
He was certainly very entertaining when he appeared in Have I Got News For You. I think he took everybody by surprise.
But it is interesting, people like candidates being a bit lively, don't they? Because on one hand, we have people say, if I hear the word strong and stable, I'll go mad. And if people take a bit of a risk, do a bit of a stunt, I don't think we should say, oh, look at that.
No, not at all. We've enjoyed it immensely. I hope he does it again in the next few days. Well, tonight, the Prime Minister and the Labour leader will face each other, kind of, in a Question Time Leaders special. It won't be a head-to-head debate. Instead, Mrs May and Mr Corbyn will face audience questions one after the other. Well, earlier, my colleague Simon McCoy went onto the set of the show, which is being held in York, ahead of the debate, where he found out more about the programme.
Well, as you can see here at the University of York, nothing is being left to chance. We have the microphones, JC Main, JC Spare, Jeremy Corbyn, of course, PM, 2 for her, and 2 for David Dimbleby, who'll be standing at this lectern, putting the questions from the audience directly to the Prime Minister and to the leader of the Labour Party. Now, they are going to be standing here at this lectern on this set, which, as you can see, has yet to be unveiled. Let's talk to Rob Hopkin, who's directing tonight's show. I'll call it a show, but you've got to be ready for anything, haven't you?
Well, yes, because it's live and we have members of the public here to ask the questions, and who knows what's going to be said, what's going to sort of spark or ignite the clamour. The sort of success or failure of the night is, of course, dependent on the interaction between the politicians and the audience, as ever.
Quick word about the audience. How are they chosen?
Ooh, that's a very complex issue. It's very balanced. It is demographically and politically representative of the area. That's our formula for Question Time. Tonight, I think it's probably even more focused on a sort of national agenda.
I know you've got loads to do. I wish you luck. Thank you very much, Rob. So, of course, all the cameras are going to be focused on here. But in many ways, it's not just the two people performing here who are going to be the focus, it's the questions from the audience, 150 people who are sitting here. And as we've seen before, it's a question from a person sitting here and the response to that could be making the headlines tomorrow.
And we'll find out, of course, in the paper review at 10:40 while Jessica and Anne are still here. Jessica, what do you think both of the leaders need to do tonight?
I think in the last time that they went head-to-head, and you couldn't call it a debate because they never actually saw each other's faces, Jeremy Corbyn, I think, did a lot better than people might have expected of him. I think Theresa May played it quite safe, and I think the main takeaway I took from the last debate was that neither of them had a real knockout blow. There wasn't a real special moment for them where you could say, this is the moment when they won the campaign, this is the moment when they locked threw it away. And I think that they'll clearly be trying to avoid the latter, but both of them, I think, will be hoping to land some sort of knockout moment in each of the two debates that they do.
How problematic is it that they're not facing each other? I mean, I'm sure that the audience will give them a tough time.
Yes, the audience will give them a tough time, but the format is the way it is. And it's interesting, given that they clearly didn't want to do debates, that they've never been off the television, have they? More than EastEnders. But I think it's interesting, just to pick up Jessica's point there about the knockout blow, I frame it a little bit differently. I think the job is to convince people watching in the country, way beyond the audience that they're with tonight, of who is going to be the next Prime Minister, who should be Prime Minister as we go into the last days. All that stuff about, well, I like Jeremy Corbyn a bit more, he's not as lefty as I thought, even if he is, or, I actually think Theresa May, even though she's a bit wooden, is okay and reliable. These things are great. We're not about really inviting them in for a cup of tea or a glass of wine. It's who is going to run the country. And I would guess that is the focus that their teams will be on right now as they go out there. It's a bit different from the early part, the softer shows, where they could just establish themselves as okay people.
Yes, and I suppose as well, if Jeremy Corbyn's had a good week and Theresa May not so, there's an opportunity and a risk for them both tonight.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely an opportunity. I think Jeremy Corbyn goes into this having had the easier week. He'll be looking not to sort of jeopardise any of the momentum that he's gained in the past week tonight, by making some sort of terrible gaffe. And Theresa May, this is her opportunity to try and seize back whatever momentum she's lost in the last week and really sort of take the initiative going into the final days.
And I suppose that's what makes Question Time so exciting, isn't it? Is because politicians might be able to sort of second guess what journalists are going to ask, but not so much members of the public.
I think that's very true, and all the Jessica's out there in this campaign. I've been out for lots of them over longer than I care to reveal on your show. But one of the things that we notice is that when I've seen politicians really look like they were grappling for where they weren't sure what they were reaching for, it was when somebody just said something that threw them off. I'm thinking back to Mr. Blair and then Lady Sharon Storer asking about the health service, saying you don't really care, and that really threw him in a way that a journalist would probably have gone after the figures or said, this is what you said then, this is what you're not doing now. But no, that very direct thing, that the public is unpredictable, which is what makes it so interesting. And I think it's very good that they're doing it, even if they don't want to debate each other. I think it will bring out something.
I think as well, parties do prep this kind of thing to the nth degree. They have their aides standing in for other politicians, pretending to be David Dimbleby. But you can't prep for everything. There are so many topics that could come up. In the last debate with the leaders, which that Theresa May didn't come to, there was a question from the audience about climate change, and a couple of the aides admitted to me in the spin room at the backstage that they hadn't prepped a question on climate change, which I think is perhaps telling in a different way.
They will have done tonight after Mr. Trump's decision.
Yes.
Well, that Question Time Leaders special with David Dimbleby featuring Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn takes place this evening. There'll be full coverage here on the BBC News Channel from 8 o'clock. The debate starts at 8:30. Now, one of the most important battlegrounds in this election may well be the London suburbs, where Labour and the Lib Dems and the Conservatives will all be hoping to pick up crucial seats. And nowhere more so than in the marginal seat of Enfield North. It's currently held by Labour, but in recent years has swung backwards and forwards between them and the Conservatives. So what might tip it one way or the other? Aisha Baksh has been finding out.
It's London's northernmost constituency, and come election day in Enfield North, every vote counts. For many years now, this seat has swung between Labour and the Conservatives. At the last election, there were just 1,000 votes between the two candidates. Both parties will also be trying to woo UKIP voters, whose candidate last time polled 4,000 votes. Labour's Joan Ryan was first elected when Tony Blair came to power in 1997. At the last election, she took the seat back from the Conservative Nick Dubois. One of the big issues then was Chase Farm Hospital.
Save Chase Farm!
The Labour government under Gordon Brown signed off plans to downgrade it, and in opposition, David Cameron vowed to save it. But later, as Conservative Prime Minister, both the maternity and A&E units were closed down. Can local people trust the Conservatives on the NHS, given what happened with Chase Farm?
Well, I think local people do trust us with what's actually happening with healthcare, because they know we're the party in the government that will continue to keep the economy strong to fund those services we need. We're already seeing now that the CCG has effectively got its act together. We're now seeing weekend openings in clusters for GP surgeries. We're actually seeing that healthcare is very much on the agenda.
My view is that no hospital, no A&E is currently safe under the Tories. There is only a Labour government that will protect and properly invest in the NHS, available free at the point of use.
And how will they pay for it?
They've made it clear how they will pay for it. I mean, I do think it's important that the Labour Party has costed all its proposals.
Like many other parts of London, Enfield's also recently seen a rise in knife crime, as MP Nick Dubois worked to amend the legislation. Those convicted twice of possession of a blade would be given an automatic jail sentence.
We've had now 11 stabbings, 3 of which are fatal, since April the 1st. We've lost 188 uniformed officers off the streets of Enfield since 2010, since the Tory government, and in that very same period we've seen a doubling of violent crime.
Austerity cuts under the Conservatives haven't helped. Cuts to local youth services, cuts to the police force. What would you say about that?
Well, I think first of all, in terms of the police force, we when I arranged for the Home Secretary to come here to Enfield 2 weeks ago, we met with the borough commander, and he was absolutely clear he's got the resources to do the job, and he's echoed that since.
This election, in some other marginal seats, UKIP haven't fielded candidates where pro-Brexit Conservatives are standing, but that hasn't happened here. Is UKIP still relevant given the Conservatives' support for Brexit now?
Oh, very relevant, because, you know, Theresa May could backslide at any minute. We have to be there to be fully pushing the buttons and be there, a force to be reckoned with, to keep her on her toes.
With just a few days of canvassing left, all the candidates running in Enfield North will be working hard to get their message across. Aisha Baksh, BBC London News.
The Liberal Democrats and the Greens are also standing in Enfield North, and here is a full list of the candidates. Well, with the election fast approaching, my colleague Victoria Derbyshire has been organising a series of election blind dates, a lunch between two people with very different political views. Today it's the turn of Labour's Jess Phillips and the Conservatives' John Whittingdale. This is how they got on.
I am Jess Phillips and I was the Labour Member of Parliament for Birmingham Yardley, and now I'm the candidate in that election. I was raised to hate the Tories. I mean, there are still some who I think are three-headed monsters. I feel slightly anxious about going out with somebody I don't know who it is. I wouldn't want it to be anyone really boring.
I'm John Whittingdale. I'm the parliamentary candidate at the moment for Malden, which is in Essex. So my confession to you is I'm taking a night off in the election campaign in order to go and see Iron Maiden at the O2.
Hello, how are you? Nice to see you. Sit down.
Now, actually, we have put more money into education.
When people stand at the dispatch box and tell me there's more money in education, I look around and I wonder where it's gone, because it's not in my children's school. My actual sons fund lifelong education for them. It's not just university education. All the college funding has gone, has been cut. You know, these are things that really matter.
Yeah, but again, we get back every problem. Yes, you could be spending more money on it. The problem is that, you know, in every area, you want to spend more money.
Yeah, I want to spend more money on the kids in my
I would
constituency.
love to spend more money, but I want to get the economy to work properly. This tells you, I mean, about the ridiculous life we lead. I went to Ibiza, and so all I did was put a tweet up. It got picked up. Sacked culture secretary, spends weekend in Ibiza. People have this idea that MPs are somehow not normal people and that, we don't enjoy doing the things which everybody else enjoys doing. So, I get, people always looking at me saying, you like rock music? I say, well, yes, I do, actually. As if this is somehow bizarre.
I was in Wilkinson's buying some bin bags the other day in my constituency, and somebody was like that, I can't believe you're in Wilkinson's. I was like that. Do you have to put things in the bin? I don't have people to put things in my bins.
We agreed on quite a lot of things. We did not agree on how the nation should spend its finances.
No? Yeah.
There was a line in the sand, but it'd be boring if we were all the same.
It was Jess Phillips and the Conservatives' John Whittingdale. Get on quite well, don't they? You can see the full version of that election blind date on the BBC News website, bbc.co.uk/news. Great idea. Turn up. They really don't know who they're meeting. Well, it's been quite a week on the campaign trail. The polls apparently began to narrow. Theresa May didn't turn up for a TV debate. Jeremy Corbyn forgot his figures live on the radio. Tim Farron said everyone should be watching Bake Off. Maybe he's right. Well, Nigel Farage denied that the FBI wanted to speak to him and claimed that he was the victim of fake news. So what more can this campaign possibly throw at us as it enters the final straight? Let's ask Jessica and Anne. What are you looking forward to?
I think after that,
and lie down.
It's like one of those things where you go bowling and most of the skittles have gone down and there's like one or two and you can I hit that one? I think we are looking really. This is the week coming up when most people who are not consuming politics by the bucket load are going to be thinking, right, OK, am I going to change my vote? Am I always going to do what I did before? Have I changed since the beginning of the campaign? And all of this stuff looks very dramatic when you're sitting in the Westminster Village, or maybe you just watch a lot of politics on television because you enjoy it. But a lot of people aren't like that. They are the swing voters that the parties really need to appeal to. And I think in the last week we'll see the message being honed towards them. It might get a little boring again for that reason, but I must say I'm taking a bit of a risk saying we're going to have a boring week. Just go back rightly point out that has not turned out to be the case.
It has been such an unpredictable election, and many of us, I think political journalists, when she called the election, although it was a shock, we thought this is probably going to end up to be quite a boring election. There's a huge gulf in the polls, and it has been anything but. It's been incredibly unpredictable. But I do expect in the last week for it to get a bit more predictable, for parties to sort of stay in their safe spaces where they think they can win votes, for Theresa May to talk about strong and stable leadership, to talk about the Brexit negotiations, and to try and draw a comparison.
Off that a bit.
Just a bit. She's made an attempt today to bring us back to that, but I expect her to really focus on that in the last week, and I expect Jeremy Corbyn as well to try and go back to his safe space, if you like, which will be about social justice, about domestic policies, about education, about the health service.
How personal might it be, though?
Well, it could get personal to the extent that if Theresa May is saying, really, I'm the only one who can be trusted with Brexit, she can do a positive message, but I think she has to underline it and say, and frankly, look around me, you can take the other guy over me, and to say nothing of the Liberal Democrats who are sort of fighting a slightly different battle about seats and about presence. I don't think she's a politician who's very comfortable with a negative message. I think she likes to think of herself as being quite an upright person, but I think she probably does need to take on this new soft Jeremy, which is sort of the Corbyn brand has done very well by focusing on his personal qualities and that he makes his own jam, and that he doesn't actually come from the hard left of the party. A lot of Labour people think that he's too far to the left. So I would imagine she will go on that. And he, I'm sure, will go the other way around, saying, you are much more right-wing than you seem, and you're much more the old Thatcherite tradition than you pretend. So I think it could go a bit negative. Yes.
And polls as well, we're likely to have a raft of those again this weekend. I wonder what they'll throw up.
They are, and the polls as well have been so unpredictable. There is such a gulf between what some polling companies are saying and what others are saying. So, YouGov earlier in the week predicted a hung parliament. Some people are saying that the Tories are 12 points ahead. It's really, no one seems to know what's going on.
Someone's going to have egg on their face.
They are.
That is guaranteed.
Unless they dovetail
Not
over the weekend.
Obviously.
No, never journalists. Especially us, we don't have opinions. We all know politics is a dog-eat-dog world. Forgive me, please. But what happens when a pooch tries to get into Parliament? CBBC's Hakaty Doug has been pounding the pavements and hounding the political establishment as he tries to find out exactly what it takes to become an MP.
So, very soon, adults in the UK will be voting for who they want as their MP. I thought that stuff of meat paste, cocker. Free meat paste for everyone! Here I am, pack of a dog, at Downing Street. That's in London, that. And look who's there, cocker. It's my first constituent. Yeah, it's Larry the cat. Yoink! I'm here with Edwina Currie, who used to be an MP. Now, where's that Newsnight studio? Alan Johnson, are you going to help me out with my big plan to be an MP? Yeah, I've been known to... Get your shoes on, love. We're going knocking on some doors. Knock on the door, let's see if we can get a voter. Da. You did a musical knock then. Whose is that grab bag of crisps? They're my favourite crisps, them. I'm standing to be Prime Minister or something. I want free crisps. I want to get to plenty of votes here, Edwina Currie, so I win the election, right, and become the new king. The King of Wigan! Yes! Hello? Oh, Newsnight, you say? You'd like me to come on the show and be interviewed about my policies?
Do your sums add up?
No. Do yours?
Mr. Hacker, this is not about me. It's about the policies that you're taking to the people of the United Kingdom for this election.
Can you get us on Dragon's Den? Speak to me! I'm off to it the big time. La 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 la.
He's a shoo-in, isn't he? Especially with that jacket. Would you vote for him?
I think he's one of those terrifying TV animals. It's a bit Basil Brush.
It is a bit Basil Brush.
Yes. And the funny thing is that he does actually have some little political tropes going on, which is slightly worrying. I don't know, is it that the politicians look more like the dog or vice versa?
I dread to think.
I have seen people run far less competent election campaigns.
He certainly had Evan on his toes. Jessica Elgott from The Guardian and Anne McElvoy from The Economist, thank you very much. Time for a look at the weather forecast.